Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Welcome to Socialism in Missoula, the first panel event in the Socialism Speaker Series put on by the Western Montana chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, or DSA. My name is Brendan Work, and I'm a co-chair of the chapter. I'm very proud to be seated here with fellow DSA members Kristen Jordan and Daniel Carlino, who work on the Missoula City Council, and who are here tonight to answer some questions put forward by our chapter. We will have 10 prepared questions, followed by time for questions from the audience. I encourage you all to silence your cell phones and be respectful of the presenters. There is a donation jar here at this table, some materials from the DSA, free buttons and stickers at that table. I want to thank you all for coming tonight on a night that I hope we will look back on as having changed Missoula for the better. The topics for tonight's discussion are wide-ranging, from immediate practicalities to long-term goals, from local projects to global crises. The unifying theme and the reason for this event is a growing sense that Missoula politics and culture are shifting to the right. Budget cuts are hurting our schools, while teachers fight for raises less than half the rate of inflation. As temperatures drop, police budgets rise, and yard signs proudly display people's contempt for the homeless. Undergirding all of these is the shockingly unsustainable cost of living in Missoula. The median home price is over $500,000, with population growth regularly exceeding the housing stock and a quarter of renters spending more than half of their income on rent. Our city is pushing out the poor and acceding to the demands of the rich. We urgently need a progressive vision for public welfare and the collective power to achieve it. We need a clean environment, we need equal rights, and a healthy community. We need socialism. And so, my first question to the councilors, what is socialism to you? How can the City Council facilitate or obstruct it? And do you have examples off the tops of your heads? Go ahead.
Yeah, I could kick us off. Socialism to me is essentially organizing our society and economy in a way that centers human beings and people and our planet first, not a for-profit system, which is under capitalism and what we're, for the most part, living under right now. So what that looks like is making sure that everybody can get their basic needs met, whether it's housing, food, water, electricity, childcare, etc. Everything that we need for basic life. We know that we have enough resources in our society to make it happen, but currently we live in a mostly profit-driven society. So socialism to me is putting people first and our planet first and centering our society around that. And what was the second part of the question?
How can the City Council facilitate or obstruct that view of socialism?
Yeah, there's we can't do it all as a city, but we can do quite a bit. For example, when we took over the water company and put that into public ownership, I think that was a huge example of how socialism can work, and taking that out of a for-profit system and making it to where now we have democratically controlled water, to where we can all make decisions on how we're going to run our water utility and how we can make it more environmentally friendly and make it to where we can all afford water in the future. So I think that was a great, easy, tangible example to think of, and thinking about how we can do that with other utilities and other basic needs in the future. A big hindrance to how we, at the city level is that we're blocked by, state and federal laws. Like, for example, as socialists, I think we believe that we shouldn't just be taxing everyday people, and especially not low-income people, to fund all these things, but we should be taxing the ultra-rich, the billionaires, the people that are hoarding the wealth. So, so I think that's one barrier that we have right now, but we still can do what we can to push for socialist type policies under whatever power we have as a local government, which is quite a bit. And I'll pass it over to Kristen.
Thank you. Okay, what socialism means to me really is a social safety net that is provided by the government. We all pay taxes, and we all deserve to have our basic needs met just because we're human beings, and that there is such a ginormous disparity between those that have and those that don't is really troubling to me. And I really think that government was set up to look after its people, and the further we get, the further we go in time, the further we get away from that, and the further we're taught that we should be paying our taxes but not expecting anything back from the government, and I think that is just not true. It's not acceptable. It's not why government was set up. I know that there's a lot of talk about how private nonprofits really need to be stepping in and picking up the slack and making sure that citizens are taken care of, but I think about people out in eastern Montana, and there are no private nonprofits out there, but what exists in every county is county government, and everybody's paying taxes in that county government, and they should see a return on their investment, which is a social safety net provided by the government. And that social safety net, to me, encompasses all the things that Daniel talked about, like affordable housing. We have capitalized everything in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, shelter, food, healthcare, education, and I think that that is exactly what we shouldn't be doing and what I think socialism would do if we were allowing it to kind of really take hold. How it can play out on city council, where do I even get started? It's been entirely frustrating. I kind of think back on my city councildom and didn't realize that I was as socialist as I was until I got on city council, and I thought, look, I'm on there with a bunch of Democrats. It should be a pretty easy process. And it took me 2 years to try and figure out what was going on, and I realized that I'm on a city council with a bunch of dinos. They're Democrats in name only. They are not interested in ensuring that everybody's looked after in our county. They continuously make decisions that hurt people who don't have. Daniel's example of the No Camp Missoula was prime. We had so many people. We had hours of testimony. I mean, it actually makes me almost want to tear up again, of people who said, tell unhoused people where they can go. Give unhoused people the resources they need. Hours of testimony, and it took one angry ward to completely overturn everything, and we ended up changing our ordinance to be really punitive and suddenly start criminalizing people who are unhoused when there's literally nothing they can do about it. So at the local level, that was really frustrating to me. We have the tools at local government, and Daniel's right, like we are limited by the state and the feds, but we also choose to not be as useful as we can be on city council, and that's really frustrating to me because we could be doing so much more and looking after people better. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for those great answers. Let's go back a couple years. Why did you both decide to run for council, and how did those campaigns go? Do you have any advice for people, some here, running for local office as socialists?
Yeah, I remember I originally actually ran for Public Service Commission before running for City Council, and I had a particular moment that made me want to run. I've been doing activism for about 8 years or so, and we were with a group of environmental activists and climate activists up in Helena listening to the Public Service Commission, who regulates Northwestern Energy and our utility monopolies. And they were showing the next 20-year plan for Montana's energy grid. And on there we had, there's 5 public service commissioners. There was one guy literally falling asleep, like, kid you not, falling asleep during the meeting for the next 20-year plan, just nodding off. They're all in their suits. Some of them are climate deniers, don't believe in climate change at all. And we just looked like the future was not hopeful at all in the moment. And, I got up there and, did what I could as a young environmental studies student and try to just explain the climate crisis to them and why it's important for us to transition off of fossil fuels in the next 20 years. And we've got people falling asleep, people that are that have no idea how science works with these things or choose not to believe it. And then we had a guy that was representing us that was, I think, around that just, climate denier. He'd been there for a long time. And in my moment of testifying to them about our energy plan is when I was like, okay, I need to run against one of these people. I have no idea how politics works or what's going on, but this is ridiculous, that these people are in charge of our energy and our future as young people. So I originally ran for that. And I lost in the primary in 2020. And then in 2021, for years I'd been going to city council meetings and tried to advocate for all sorts of different things. And then just realized that, that I need to run for that too. We've got the similar things going on here where we'll have people advocating for all sorts of different stuff, like helping our housing, helping our environment, and we always fall short as a local government. So I started running for that. And I think my main advice for other people that would want to run, especially people that are really progressive or socialists, would be that you can definitely do it. And socialist policies are super popular. Perhaps the S word itself is not popular, but I think the policies themselves are super popular, especially in Missoula. And the main way I ended up winning was just knocking a lot of doors and talking to a lot of people. If you come with popular ideas and policies and you talk to enough people in town, I really think anybody could win. I had like a fraction of the campaign dollars and money compared to my opponent, and basically it just took having really progressive ideas and getting out there and just meeting thousands of people and hearing what people have to say and being genuine. And my only qualifications pretty much were just being an activist and just graduating environmental studies the last year. So really very little qualifications, but that fire in my belly to want to help change the world, and just did a lot of door knocking and talking, and then ended up with a narrow win.
I might also add, too, that Daniel had a couple of extra special things going against him as he ran that were deliberate actions taken against him to stifle his ability to win, and he still won because he crushed it. So, yeah. I won't go into those details. Okay, so I've always wanted to be on city council. Ever since I've been a little kid, I've been fascinated with policy and data, and whenever we got our ballots, or my parents would get their ballots, I would be fascinated about how you can write a ballot to inform somebody about something without leading them one way or another. And just being really informative. And I wanted to be a lobbyist for cool stuff, not bad stuff. And so it's always been in my blood. And I think the reason why local government fascinates me so much is that we're sitting here right now with you folks. You are our constituents, and we're 1 degree of separation away from the people that we represent. And you're 1 degree of separation away from the people who are trying to make the best decisions for you. And I like that 1 degree of separation. People know where I live. They have my personal phone number. I know background stories of the people that I represent, and it just feels really kind of hands-on and effective, and I think it's also, I did an MPA at UM, a Master's in Public Administration, and one thing one of my professors there said all the time was that cities and counties are the laboratories of democracy. And I think that's really true. It's like we can experiment with ideas on a really small scale and see the effects of them right away, and then we can change those right away because we are so close to the people that we represent. And I just think that local government is a really exciting place to be. I had no problem winning my race. That race, that year, I won by the most out of all the races. I think it was 74%. And the guy I ran against made it really easy. He didn't do anything, so that helped. But I think, I had an opportunity to kind of make a name for myself. I set up the Criminal Justice Reforms Department in the county and had got the initial funding for our mobile support team. And so people knew that I had done this kind of work before, and so I think that helped when they maybe Googled my name or something. But I did not knock as many doors as Daniel did at all. I was just coming out the other side of cancer and didn't have a lot of energy, so I'm pretty grateful that the guy I was running against didn't do a lot, and I'm fine now. But what I would say is if you want to run, and I'm going to speak for you because I know I can in this particular instance, is that if you want to run, let us know, and we will help you. You don't need any experience. You don't need to have money. You don't need to have endorsements. You just need to have a desire. And there are people in this town who will tell you that you shouldn't run because you don't have any experience. I won't name any names, but they are other people that you voted for, and they want you to think that this is untouchable for you, and it's not. If you want to run for city council or any other office, let Daniel and I know, and we will help you because we want to see people that look like our town sitting at our horseshoe, instead of the way it looks.
Thank you.
We need representation, and everybody deserves to be represented. And what I want City Council to be is a mirror of the people that we represent. We don't have any Native Americans on City Council. We don't have anybody on the gender spectrum. We're all cisgendered heteros. I'm pretty sure. Yes, I'm pretty sure we are. We need these people. We need a lot more younger people. Our biggest demographic in Missoula is 30 and under, and so we need more 30 and unders on City Council because that's you folks. So all I'm saying is, if you want to run, call us. That's all you need. Is you need to want to run, and then we'll help you figure out the rest. Honestly.
You should go first on some of these too.
What's that?
You want to switch up?
Let's
Oh,
You
sure.
go first.
Okay.
let's get into some of the issues. The first question is about the Crisis Intervention Team, or the CIT. What is your plan to fully fund the CIT, which reduces the likelihood of police violence in Missoula?
Oh, boy, that's an interesting one, because I know, I'm pretty good friends with our local, the gal who runs the CIT program, and she's been working from a grant since she started. And, I think in a way, the fact that the CIT and our mobile support team are not fully funded is a representation of where the real big decision makers in our towns place their value. I am frustrated that perhaps the police department doesn't take the initiative to make this happen. So what is our goal? What is our plan to get this funded? Budget amendments. And we can try, but it's often, for the last 3 budget cycles, there have been things where it's just been Daniel and I who vote yes on them. And so that's why we need you folks to run, so that we can have a quorum and start getting some things passed on City Council, because it's really hard to just have 2 votes out of 12. And so we need more people on City Council who represent those same values and who can help us start winning votes on the council floor. And once we have those votes, then it's going to be pretty easy to fund, but it's hard to get things done when we're a minority and we don't have the votes on the council floor. I think that the CIT, I will just say the CIT program and the mobile support team need to be fully funded. They shouldn't have to worry about this stuff. This stuff keeps people out of jails. It keeps people out of the criminal justice system. It keeps people safer, and it's something that I think we should take more seriously, and we don't, so.
Yeah, I think, the government tries to use police and jails and military to solve all sorts of problems that clearly cannot be solved by that, like homelessness, for example. You can't police your way out of homelessness. You have housing gets people out of homelessness. Resources, getting people's basic needs met gets them out of homelessness, clearly. And I think the crisis intervention team is really popular amongst the city government, and it's a fairly new program. A lot of it, like Kristen said, is built off of federal government grants. So those grants are going to go away over time, and most of them almost went away this week. And then, but either way, we need to move this into our regular annual city budget and county budget to make sure that these things are permanently funded. And in the future, I would hope that we don't live in such a police state where every problem is solved with a police officer. Perhaps we can keep building off of these other teams, like the mobile support team that we have. Right now, they run only part of the day, where they can answer to mental health calls with a psychologist and EMT. Some situations call for that rather than somebody with arrest power and a gun. And some situations, like maybe we could have traffic patrols. Like maybe we don't need somebody with a gun and an intimidation to answer everybody that has a broken taillight or speeds. Or we can think of the issue and then think of specialized teams that we can do in the future. A police is a one-size-fits-all approach. And the crisis intervention team is doing a great job of collecting data and holding them accountable and helping to change the system. And many of our police officers are totally on board with that. But we should not be using police for every situation. It's caused a ton of problems. It's hurt minorities the most. And it's something that we don't need to continue doing in the future. We can think more creatively and create more teams that are specially equipped to handle each emergency situation.
I have an ad too. Daniel, actually I can't remember, but I have voted no on the city budget every year I've been on. And the reason why is we don't have enough information, in my opinion, to make informed decisions about the budget. And the reason why I say that is because we need metrics on all of our programs in the city so that we know how they're doing. And then we can do priority-based budgeting, which may mean that we could find the funding in our existing budget to fund the CIT and the mobile support team, I think.
All right, I'll slightly adapt the next question. Why do you believe that is, that the most commonly proposed solution to homelessness is the arrest and confiscation of people's belongings? Philosophically, why do you think that emerges first in government currently, and what can we do differently?
Sure, I can take that. Yeah, I mean, the city does, don't get me wrong, the city and county does do a lot of things to provide resources with, some of our shelters and things. But often whenever we talk about, adding capacity to shelters, like right now we have standing room only in like the Johnson Street shelter. It's like at capacity, we have more people than we have like beds, and sometimes people have to standing room only. So the city often does provide resources. We have like the new Blue Heron project on Broadway and Mullen, which has 30 like apartment style buildings, and next to it we have the temporary safe outdoor space where we have pallet shelters where people can have a locked door at night and have their own space. And I think those are all great examples, and we should build off of those things. But we are spending millions of dollars a year as a city government with our taxes, pushing people from place to place, taking their vehicles, taking their tents, taking all their belongings. And it's actually super counterproductive. It makes them have to experience homelessness for a longer period of time when that money could be used for more resources. If people commit an actual crime, that's one thing. If people are just trying to live and survive, that is not a crime. And those two have been conflated at City Council a lot lately. Some of our longest meetings have gone till 3, 4 a.m. where we're debating these things. And I think the reason that we're seeing a lot of this is we do have, limited resources, but we shouldn't be wasting millions on pushing people from place to place and towing their vehicles and making it harder for them to survive. I think that's a huge waste of resources, and it's making people have to experience homelessness longer. But we get a lot of complaints from people, people in the community will complain to City Council about, oh, there's this tent or there's this person that's making me feel unsafe. And and then that's what the City Council is responding to with some of these ordinances. And this recent ordinances that the city's passed would not be possible without Donald Trump and without the Supreme Court overruling Martin v. Boise, which made it to where local communities had to have enough shelter beds available before they could give people misdemeanor charges or criminal charges or take people's tents and vehicles. So, I mean, these policies that the City Council in Missoula, our progressive cities passing, are based off of Trump and Supreme Court policies. Like after they overturned Martin v. Boise, similar to when they overturned Roe v. Wade, now local governments or states have the ability to do these give criminal charges, take people's vehicles, whether or not there's enough shelter beds. So, I mean, it is a fascist policy, whether it's coming from Trump and the Supreme Court or coming from our progressive City Council. We'll just call it how it is, that these are like authoritarian policies that are criminalizing people, giving out misdemeanor charges, sending people to jail, whether or not they have a place to go. And I think a lot of it comes from City Council members feeling the pressure of people complaining about people camping or tents and things, and then trying to figure out what to do, and they're trying to hide the problem. If there's a tent here, move them, send them to jail, give them criminal charge, do whatever we have to do as a city to get these people like moved and not have to look at poverty in the eye. And we can't sweep people under the rug. They're our neighbors. They deserve a lot better. And I think the answer is more resources, more housing, do more of the good stuff that we're already doing as a city and county. And a lot of the mindset also that whenever we try to, like me and Kristen or other people at the city ask, how can we open up more shelters? How can we get more like programs like this? they say, oh, we need a nonprofit to partner with. We need churches to partner with. And like those are all great to partner with, but we as a government, it's our job to take care of people, whether or not we have nonprofits, whether or not we have people that are going to step up. Like we are collecting the taxes for the city. Let's put them towards providing resources.
This is going to sound weird, but can you repeat the question really quick?
Sure. With rapidly filling shelters, dangerously cold weather, why do you believe the most commonly proposed solution is the arrest of homeless people and confiscation of their belongings? What can we do differently? Similar to the last question.
Yeah, thank you. About a year ago when we were going through our houseless working group sessions, I asked ChatGPT why Americans hate homeless people. It's fascinating. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to play in ChatGPT, but it's a collection of the American conscious. And it was largely about we're all, like so many of us are living paycheck to paycheck, that when we see homeless people, they remind us of our own vulnerability. People have no empathy because they use their own lens to say, look, I almost was homeless, but I wasn't, so why can't that person get out of their homelessness? It was a really interesting insight on Americans' views of what it is to be unhoused. In an ideal world, I think that the housing situation is a federal level policy issue that is being handed down to the local municipalities who have the least resources to handle it. And so at the local level, I think what we could be doing, Daniel touched on it a lot, but we didn't have to make urban camping a misdemeanor crime. We chose to do that as a city council. Well, we didn't, but they did, which is why we need more of you, because then we could have voted no on it. We don't have to do that. And when we do that, we fill our jail full of people who are nonviolent, who are further disrupted, who lose their personal belongings. For some reason, the answer to everything in America is the criminal justice system. And I lived in Australia for 14 years, and I sometimes wonder who I would be had I not lived there, because they have an entirely different approach on the world and how they look after their people. And there isn't this iron hatred to the unhoused in Australia. It's like, oh gosh, what does that poor sucker need to get, himself out of a bad situation? What can we do? And here we look at them and loathe them. And we need education. I mean, when I was running for city council, that was one of the things I wanted to do, was educate people about the unhoused. It's not people sitting around trying to drain our pockets. That's what big government has done, is they said, we're going to do all this horrible stuff over here, but the real problem are the immigrants and the unhoused, while they're doing all this stuff behind our backs. And I think that the unhoused are a symptom or a distraction to keep us all focused on something other than what we should be focused on, because we have enough resources to look after the unhoused. We do. We could have opened up an authorized campsite. I know that that's one thing even the No Camp Missoula people were like, look, we don't want them in our parks, but we do have to tell them where they can go. Why can't we tell the unhoused where they can go? Why can't we use a piece of city property and take out porta potties and hand washing stations and sharps containers and trash bins and let them camp on city property? Why can't we do that? And I think the reason why, and this is a little touchy, is that in some ways, as a city councilor, I don't feel like I actually have any power, because it is city staff who are driving the policies like these. They bring us baked ideas and they say, this is how we have to do it because of money, staffing, this and this and this. And we go, but wait, we want to change this one part. And they're like, no, you can't. And so what largely happens is staff brings us fully baked policies. Majority of city council votes yes for it. And so I would argue that it's actually not city council that's running this town. It is largely staff who bring us fully baked ideas. We don't have enough votes on council to change things. And so I personally, as a city councilor, feel really frustrated because staff are making decisions for which I'm held publicly accountable for. And if I were in some of these staff positions making $150,000 a year, I would bring different stuff to city council. Like the directors of departments in the city.
Yeah, like the city administration, which would be run by the mayor, basically. But yeah, essentially, what's that?
Are they elected?
No, they can be appointed by the mayor or changed by the mayor or the executive branch. But there's often, typically, the mayor hasn't really changed. Like different mayors that we've had over the last few years haven't really changed. Like many of the city staff members.
The county commissioners, yeah. the county. Let's continue with our list of prepared questions, and then we will
Okay.
have time at the end for.
But essentially, like most of the policy that we see at City Council is written by like city staff, and then they give it to City Council, and we have the ability as a council to amend it, vote yes or no. But I'd say like 99% of the time, city staff comes to us, and then the majority of council votes yes.
With no changes.
With no changes. And really, that kind of stifles the democratic process because the voters voted in city council members to make policy, and we need to be proposing more policy, writing more policy, and on behalf of people that elect us.
Yes, and you know who gets the phone calls? I do. And so what I'm starting to do is give out the direct lines of the directors who are in charge of these policies.
Thank you. Let's stay on housing for the next question. What is your outlook for the future of Missoula renters? And do you have any plans to push housing first policies at the council?
Yeah, so I actually have a really cool, well, I have a ton of cool constituents, but one of those cool constituents just reached out to me recently and said, hey, have you heard of the AI rent price fixing software that's being used in different cities? And I said, no, tell me more. And so this person has found that they're not in Montana yet, but in bigger cities in California and I think Philadelphia, there's actually software that the property management companies are using to price fix rent so that nobody's responding to the market and so that they can all keep rent at a certain price. They are being sued by the federal government, so this is an idea that is not well accepted, but it's not illegal yet. And so me and this constituent are working on bringing a policy forward that will make Missoula a place where people cannot, property management companies cannot use price fixing software. So that is something that I hadn't thought of. And this is why another cool thing about local government is you can call me on the phone and be like, I got this really cool idea, and we'll bring it to the council floor for you. And that's where this came from because I didn't know. Sorry? Okay, I want to talk to you after this. So other than that, we don't have a lot of control. You know, we did try and do a universal application, so folks only have to do one application. We're not allowed to do that. We're prohibited by law from doing things like this. Daniel probably has some better ideas, though. Sorry to put you in.
That's okay.
Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the epitome of capitalism. Have the AI algorithm determine how much we're going to pay to survive in our house. That's totally ludicrous. And I think the socialist way would be to have social housing, where we have housing based off of how much people can afford and how much they can pay. And like the calculation that most people use is like if you're paying more than 30% of your income, then you're rent burdened. You know, is kind of just like the standard that most nonprofits and things go with right now. And I'd say most renters in town are definitely rent burdened. We've seen rents skyrocket over just the last few years. It's insane. You know, some of the good things that we're doing, I think, are like when we've seen like North Missoula Community Development Corp and the city and county partner to do help renters and owners of the trailer park homes buy the whole trailer park, so they're not just like so the rent's not determined by the landlord and the owner, but now they are the owners and they collectively own it and make decisions democratically together. I think that's like a huge example of what we can do. I mentioned the Blue Heron project, where it's for people that are experiencing homelessness can have a full enclosed apartment for themselves while they can, you know, work to get back into market rate housing or back into other social housing. But just if you can't pay, I mean, in the future, I think we should have more housing for people that can't pay or have housing for people that can only pay a little bit. We do things like the new like Rivera project that's being built right now on Scott Street, where it's just like rent restricted for lower income. We base it off of like the area median income. So we're building homes for people that are making like 60% of the area median income, like below average, and then base their rent off of that. So basically more subsidized by the government housing, more co-ops like the trailer parks, and things like that, I think is a huge step forward. A lot of just like renters protections and renters rights are mostly going through like the state and federal government. Like we are blocked. We were blocked by the governments to do certain things. Like I think 30 days is not long enough to decide to get kicked out of your house and have somewhere to go. I think that should be a lot longer, and we don't have power over some stuff like that as a local government. But certainly people should have a longer period of time to look for housing. And then also what we're doing is just trying to allow for an abundance of housing to be built, and I think ideally make sure that we're making sure that we are building more and more housing that is income restricted to where rent restricted to where people can afford it that can't afford market rate housing, because market rate housing is just out of control now. Do you want?
Ma'am, I think if we could just save questions for the end, this is
We're going to have
certainly
open
going to be a
questions
big,
at the end, is
Yeah.
what Brandon's saying.
this is going to be a
But I
big
hear
topic
you.
at
Yeah,
the
let's come back to that one.
I have another quickie real quick. Daniel's right. There are some other things we can do. We can loosen our ADU laws. I wanted to put an ADU in my backyard and was told I couldn't because where I wanted to put it was outside of the visual line of the edge of my home. And so suddenly I couldn't put it here. I had to put it there, and there's not enough room there. And that's just a rule we came up with in Missoula. It's ridiculous. Exactly. Why? So when you drive past, you don't see it sticking out, like that OCD in all of us where we want to see everything lined up. So we can do things like that. Another thing we talked about on City Council was short-term rentals. Sorry, you spurred some ideas in my head.
Yep.
And staff came to us and said, hey, we did this big, huge study, and we only 3% of the homes in Missoula, I think it was 3%, of the homes in Missoula are short-term rentals.
Something like that.
And
yeah.
they're like, that's completely within the acceptable limits of normalcy across the country. And it's like, but we're in Missoula. We're in a housing crisis. Perhaps we should make it 0.5%. Or this is something we have control over. And we were told by staff that it was normal, it was healthy, it's where we wanted it, but our vacancy rate wasn't quite in the right place, but our short-term rentals were not causing the problem.
Right. Yeah, I want to add on to that too. Like, I think I brought up a policy a year or two ago to make it to where short-term rentals, I was just trying to classify them as businesses. Like, makes a lot of sense, right? They're a business. And even that got shot down because people put capital and the pursuit of profit over the need for housing.
Yeah.
And like, even something that simple, like capitalism won. And that is another, I think at least 1,000 homes are not on the market for Missoulians and instead are being pursued for extra profit. When they could still make a profit and rent them out to Missoulians. But I think, it's a small part of the problem, but it's definitely something. And then last thing that we're trying to do also to help renters and homeowners alike, we're redoing the zoning for the city, which is basically what can be built where. And right now, like the majority of town, you can only build like a single family home, or now recently you can also build like ADU, which is like a small home in the backyard. And I think, and also we have a map that shows how this has divided people based off of income, where one neighborhood will have only single family homes allowed. Their neighborhood would allow for apartments and all sorts of things. So it's basically separated people on income and even by race and other things, and this has been done intentionally for decades across the whole country. So right now we're trying to allow for a mixed use of housing in basically all neighborhoods. Make it to where people can walk to like local commercial that you'd like to go to, but also allow for that single family home, allow for a duplex, allow for a threeplex, fourplex, fiveplex, like allow for a diversity of housing so that we can have more homes for people as well. And that's something that I think we're going to be able to achieve here in the spring. Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry. This
Continue.
is a big one, and you said something is maybe wrong. Another thing we need to fix is resort taxes, and this is a state law issue. We are not allowed to have a local option sales tax in Missoula because we are too big, and it is. I think it's just size, isn't it? And it has to be kind of a destination town. I think it's populations 5,000 and under. They can come up with local option sales tax. So they'll be like, we want to tax you for using plastic bags, or we want to tax you for rental cars or something. And we are not allowed to create local option sales taxes. Probably a lot of you will remember when we did do that gas tax a couple years ago, and it barely passed, 51% to 49%, and that was a local option sales tax. We were going to use all that money to help roads, and the state came back and said, you can't do that, and they took that away from us, even though it passed at the local level. And so when we're limited from being creative like that as well, it makes it even harder. It would be awesome to have a local option sales tax. I also think we need to tax the hell out of second homeowners. So. Okay, we can move on now.
I'm sure we'll be back during the question and answer period at the end. Questions 6 and 7 are both about issues outside, well, related to Missoula and outside. The first happened about exactly 1 year ago. There was a resolution in front of the City Council to demand our federal delegation work for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the genocide in Gaza. And despite massive public support, it failed. Why do you think the City Council ceasefire resolution on Palestine failed? Can we meaningfully divest from Israel as a city?
Well, so this was my resolution, and Brendan approached me about it probably in November of 2023. And I said, there is zero chance I will bring this forward unless you get the votes on the council floor. Just because I was feeling a little raw on council and being targeted by a local reporter, and I was exhausted. And I didn't want to bring a controversial policy proposal forward without the votes. And so to his credit, he worked for a couple months and got votes on the council floor. We had enough votes to pass it. So I brought it forward, and it passed in we held it over in committee. Actually, now I can't remember. We had the votes, but we held it over in committee.
They voted to table it 7-5. Yeah, we lost by 2 votes.
Before we came into the meeting, no, something else happened. What happened? Now I'm forgetting.
That's what I was wondering.
Because it passed in committee, and then between committee and which are on Wednesdays, and Monday night meetings, which is our final vote, I lost all the votes. And it was because 2 local politicians who shall remain nameless called in some political capital. And they made some phone calls to city council and said, don't do this. And so they didn't do it. And we lost. And it got tabled. And tabling is a way to not vote. It just means I'm not going to vote yes or no on this. I just want to table it, meaning that it gets put on a shelf. And if we don't bring it back off the shelf in 6 months, it goes away. And it's been used a few times on city council so that councilors don't have to go on the record to make a controversial vote. And tabling is just a really nice way to make things go away. But that was when local politicians used their political capital and they quashed a policy proposal that was very popular. I went through all the emails that we got and did like a little data mining. And we got like 100 emails. 90 of them were for. Actually, probably 95 of them were for, and 5 of them were against. And largely, people just wanted to feel like they could do something. They felt helpless, and there were other cities across the country who were passing ceasefire resolutions. And the idea was, if we got enough cities to pass ceasefire resolutions, that we could make an impact at the federal level. But we were just, regardless of public comment, it seems to not hold weight on the council floor and be reflected in votes. I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add that, it takes like a full movement of people across the country to stop any war. Like the federal government always comes up with some reason to go to war or to fund wars. And I think, as with things like this, it's outside of the scope and authority of the city council, but we often take stances on all sorts of different issues. And I think the idea is to help join the movement, put the pressure on like our Senator Tester at the time, who we were hopeful that, he was against the Iraq war. We were hopeful that he would be against, funding the weapons and things to Israel that is causing the genocide over in Palestine. And so we were trying to join the movement with that. And, just all sorts of different reasons on, I can't really justify or say like for sure why people voted against it and stuff. But often, yeah, like Kristen said, like city council members will just like make a motion to table something. And then whenever they make the motion to table, it was like in the middle of a debate, and then it cuts off all debate, and then they just vote immediately right there. And I had a proposal to make it to where motions to table are debatable, and then that got tabled. So basically, yeah, sometimes it's nonsensical on there. Sometimes council members are scared of their own tail, and it's just, we take stances on things like on federal issues all the time, and this was one of them. But yeah, it got shot down.
Sorry, we didn't answer the divesting question. And, recently I did ask our city administrator, his name's Dale Bickle, if I could have a list of everything we're invested in. And it was a very high level thing, and it was hard to tell where we invest our money based on the information he gave me. And that's going to be a deeper, digger, harder dive. So to see if we can get Missoula to divest from things that are meaningful to us. or not meaningful to us. You wanna say anything else?
Thank you very much.
I'd have to get a full list. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, we have to.
If you get one, let me know.
Yeah, I have to dig more into the city budget and things to know for sure.
All right, question 7. What is the City Council doing to mitigate the effects of the climate crisis on Missoula? How are we planning for climate refugees in the coming decades?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a lot to help mitigate the climate crisis, and we're doing a lot to perpetuate the climate crisis as a city. I mean, to get off of fossil fuels is a huge feat, right? And we can't do it all as a city, but we're trying to do a lot of what we can. For example, right now I'm trying to make it to where we're building a more walkable, bikeable city where where you want to go is close to where you live, and make it to where people feel safe walking and biking. Like, we live in such a car-centric society, like, where I don't blame people for driving, like, especially when you have to get places. But we should make it to where people can have gyms, daycares, coffee shops, everything you can think of should be able to be built in your neighborhood. And right now, the city government is blocking that from happening, like with our zoning. So we're hoping to get that changed all this spring to where in the future we can start building things close to where people live. And making it easier for people to, not have to get in your car to go everywhere. So that's like one big thing. Right now also with our zoning, like I'm trying to make sure that we don't urban sprawl and keep building out and out and out where people have to drive into town to come, and all the homes are built outside of town because people can't afford to live here anymore. So often that comes with trying to add density and mixed use like zoning in Missoula. We need to have an abundance of homes and things in town, not let it sprawl outside of town and build out and out and out. So that's part of it. We have some clean energy initiatives, and we're trying to do what we can to make like our city buildings like more sustainable, and trying to help support like the mountain line and moving over to electric buses and all sorts of different things. One big thing I've been pushing is trying to get rid of mandated parking spots. You cannot build anything in town besides in the downtown core without building parking spots. And from a climate perspective, that makes absolutely no sense. Like, we're building like a future that is going to be toast. And essentially, I'm just trying to make it to where let people decide how many parking spots they want to build. And it's so controversial. Mm-hmm. People love their cars. Council members love their cars. It's not enough to say that climate change is real, and you have to do everything that we can to get off of fossil fuels, or else we're not doing enough. And so yeah, I've been really pushing, and I'm hopefully get it done this spring also with the rezoning and stuff of the town to make it to where you no longer have to build parking spots to build something, because that's absolutely ridiculous. And then even put parking maximums on things to where I would even be willing to make it to where businesses can't build an abundance of parking. Like, if you go out to the mall or like Walmart or Reserve Street, it's all just really ugly, huh? And you have to even just to walk from your parking spot to where you want to go, it's like walking like a block of the city too. And when we have these parking mandates and things, you stop dense development. Like, the part of towns that we all enjoy, like downtown and the riverfront and like all this stuff was built before we had all these zoning laws and before parking and mandates and things. And with our current zoning, recently you'll see more like stuff that looks like Reserve Street. And that's what our zoning calls for now. So we're hoping to get that changed this spring to start getting it back to a more climate-friendly, walkable, bikeable city, and not so car-centric. I think is probably the number one thing we can do.
Yeah, I'm also, I am really happy that our mayor in her budget this year put in a bunch of money for our urban forestry program. Just making sure that we have an urban canopy in Missoula is helpful for a variety of reasons. That we all know of, but something that I'm learning too is about stormwater runoff, and making sure that stormwater runoff actually has some types of treatments before it gets into our rivers. So currently we have 0 stormwater treatment in Missoula, which means that everything that runs off our roofs and our roads goes straight into our rivers untreated. So what that looks like is, we have the forever chemicals, we have oil, we have dog poop. If you ever needed a reason to pick up your dog poop, pick it up, because it goes into our rivers and it's actually really bad for water quality. Urban trees also help keep things cooler, so when it rains, then the water that does run off, it doesn't go into our rivers at 70 degrees or 80 degrees. It actually helps keep things cool. We can use urban trees to build little green stormwater infrastructure parks and whatnot, where runoff comes in and it runs through trees and grass and plants, and the junk gets caught into the plants and gets filtered out that way. And so I think there are some other things that we can be doing at the local level that will address climate change and a few other things. And I would say I was really happy that the mayor did put money in for urban trees. But I think stormwater runoff is a really big problem. It's something we don't even look at here in Missoula, and we are kind of at the top end of the Columbia Basin drainage. And there are chemicals in tires that absolutely make fish sterile, and we're not doing anything about it. And so I think that these are things that we can start thinking about at the local level without a lot of investment, like monetary investment, but using things like bioswales and green stormwater infrastructure to address other bits and pieces that will help with climate collapse.
Thank you very much. You've mentioned a couple times that you comprise a progressive minority on the city council. How do you see your role working with the council at large? And how do you balance swinging for the fences as a socialist with working with the majority on smaller steps?
I was really excited to get on council. I thought it would be, I knew I was probably a little bit more lefty than the average person on council, but I thought it would be great to be on a team of 10 folks who are like-minded. We get a bunch of stuff done. What's the problem? Let's get going. And it was an absolute, it was just absolutely very different than that. I thought that people had platforms, but they don't. They tend to kind of blow in the wind, and we are meant to represent people, but sometimes people will say something one time on council, and then in a different context say something different about the same thing. And it has been hard for me to figure out where people are coming from on council, because they don't kind of stand for one thing all the time. I have come to the realization that I'm probably not going to get a lot done on council because I am the minority. Me and Daniel are the minority. For me, what I want to do is be an envelope pusher. I want to make sure that we're getting conversations on the council floor and the public record, and getting all of these elected officials saying things on the public record that really tell us who they are, so you can be like, oh my gosh, so-and-so said this about what? Mm-hmm. Even though it didn't pass, at least you hear what councilors are saying about certain issues, and we need to start paying more attention. I think the average Democrat on Missoula City Council is not as progressive as we think they are. And if we're looking for some pretty big changes, then we need to start paying attention to what they're saying and what they stand for, and vote for different people. I think, I won't speak for you at all. I was about to, I apologize. But I'm happy to keep bringing things forward, but I've just realized I'm probably not going to get a lot passed. And my sole goal now is to have conversations in public, on the council floor, on the record, and getting people on the record, even if what I bring forward fails. So I've also been pretty disappointed in people. I'm not a transactional politician. If people are really shitty and they're continuously shitty, I don't want to work with them anymore. I just am tired of bullshit on city council. I am. And I quite frankly don't want to work with some of them anymore ever again. And in fact, there's a few of them that consistently lie so much that I'm keeping a tracking sheet of all their lies. And I've told them, it gets better. I have told them that I'm keeping a tracking sheet of all their lies, and whoever they run against in the future is going to get that tracking sheet, because I can't stand it. I can't stand it. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to still keep bringing forward things, and I just hope at a certain level, rather than having to schmooze people on council, that they'll look at a policy for what it is rather than who's bringing it forward. Because quite frankly, I'm sick of the bullshit.
Yeah, I relate a lot to that one, but yeah, I mean, we're definitely, I think our council makeup, like if you had to put it into political parties, we've got two like conservatives. One of them is libertarian for sure, just like less government the better. And then us two like lefties, and then 8 Democrats. And you know, we can bring them along for all sorts of votes. Like I think a lot of them agree with us in theory on things, but then suddenly the Democrats like sound like conservatives on like a lot of these issues. I think as a young person and as like a really progressive person in politics, I throw out the more ideas than I think anybody else in council in the last 3 years. Just always trying for amendments, resolutions, ordinance changes, budget amendments, just like throwing out ideas out there, because the world that I'd like to live in and the world that I think we deserve looks a lot different than what we're getting right now. And I certainly get, you know, more things shot down than anybody else on council. But I think also in the last 3 years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I've also gotten more policy changes passed than anybody on city council, because I brought way more. And yeah, it's tough out here, but I think, you know, typically when we have a lot of people come in and public comment on things, or we get a lot of comments, they're usually, we usually agree with them. Me and Kristen usually agree with like whenever a lot of the public comes in to support something, we're usually on their side. When a lot of the public comes in to oppose something, we're usually also on their side, which I think shows that overall we're on the side of like what the majority of the community wants, or at least those that come and speak out about the issues. But I think, you know, we often, you know, I try to work well with like all of them on there, but sometimes it does feel like people will vote against like a policy that they agree with in theory, but then like because I'm proposing it, or because suddenly they care about like taxes and things like this, then they will vote down like things that we're going to help affordable housing, things that we're going to help our climate, things that we're going to like that many of us support, and that they all support on paper and in theory when we're running. So it's really tough to understand where some of the Democrats on council are coming from with some of these issues, but pretty often they'll come over and vote for socialist type policies, and sometimes they won't. They're just kind of all over the place, like on different things. So yeah, we're doing our best. I think also just like whenever we see like far right policies coming or on city council, it's good to just like stand up and fight against them, even if we know that we're not going to win, and bring forward great ideas, even if we know that they're not going to get passed. Sometimes it's worth changing the conversation and helping to move things forward, and hopefully in the future things will get passed, or we'll get a watered down version of whatever we are proposing passed through city council after they like water it down and make it like less good. Then we can compromise, and that's good too. But yeah, it's tough being a minority of 2 on there on quite a few issues, but we're doing everything we can, and I'll try and do a lot more too this year.
Thanks. Our final prepared question for tonight is about the future. Realistically, where do you see Missoula in 10 to 15 years? How does that compare with what you would like to see?
You know, Daniel's done a good job talking about all of the affordable housing initiatives that the city's doing, and I actually agree with him. I think that the city's doing a great job on a lot of things that we have control over. But we still have developers coming in proposing, you know, market value developments, and they say we're contributing to the affordable housing issue by providing supply. And I say, name me one town like Missoula in the American West that has gotten cheaper because we built more houses. I just think, I don't know, maybe I'm a pessimist, I apologize, but we've been discovered, and until we start taxing second homes, we're really not, I don't think, ever going to be an affordable place again. Oh shoot, I need to be quiet. I think we've been discovered, and I think we need more people on city council to help us pass policies that are going to mean that we can keep a lot of socioeconomic diversity in Missoula, because that's what we need to hold on to. And I worry that Missoula is going to become like Bozeman, which is a beautiful place, and you know, I think the average house price there is something like $800,000. And, you know, where do the college students live? Where do the people who, the dog walkers and the baristas and the babysitters and the journalists and police and fire, where do they live in this town? We need a town that will hold on to a bunch of different socioeconomic diversity, and I worry that Missoula is not going to be able to do that unless we change some laws at the state level. And I hate being a pessimist. Sometimes constituents call me and I'm like, I'm really sorry, but here's what I think. I think that we place a lot of value in home ownership. It's the way to get ahead. It's the way to get equity. And when you have more than one home, then you have that much more equity. And I think that until we start really regulating how many houses people can own, we may never get on top of it, because we're going to build 30 to 40,000 new homes in the next 20 years. Is that right? 25,000 homes? Can't remember what they said. Anyway, thousands of homes. But the biggest problem with housing affordability are equity firms and private developers. Wall Street buying up huge chunks of housing and then anyway. We need to be calling our state legislators and our federal representatives. I apologize, it's not a super happy answer, but I don't feel very optimistic. I think that we are focusing on the wrong things, and I think we need to be more vocal and about what we want to see. Missoula is just going to keep getting bigger. There are things that we can do to make sure it stays like Missoula, like shop at the hip strip, always let a pedestrian jaywalk, always let all the things that make Missoula Missoula. Leave your dog off a leash, like all these great things. Anyway, all the things that make Missoula Missoula, and the things that we all moved here for, the things that we loved about Missoula before all the people came here for, we need to hold on to those things, because I think Missoula is going to get really big, and I think that's what's happening. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it'll have its ups and downs in the next, years. Like, it seems like things are getting really expensive really fast, and if it keeps going on track like this, we're gonna lose a lot of the really cool people in town and make it to where you have to be kind of wealthy to live here, and that I would hate to see that. I hate to see it happening right now, and I think that's gonna really lose the vibrancy of our community. I don't think it's a done deal. I think we have a lot of really cool stuff. We're like the nonprofit capital, and we have like a lot of things of just like neighbors coming together to help each other on things. Like after the storm, we saw a lot of that last summer. We see like little free libraries popping up, the free stores. Like we see like groups of people just coming together and trying to make a difference in our community, and that is really hopeful. We need more of that. We definitely need more help at like every level of government, city, county, state and federal government, and all sorts of stuff.
Volunteer boards.
Yeah, and volunteer boards. Like we just need. It's going to take a lot to keep this place affordable and vibrant and as cool as it is now. I think it's going to keep looking better and better, but we're going to lose some of the people that make this place really special if we don't get this turned around. And honestly, it's capitalism that's the problem. Like everything is getting more and more expensive, so fewer and fewer people can make massive amounts of profit. We need to stop looking at putting profit first and start looking at ways to put human, environment, and planet first. And I think that's the only way that we're going to really get there.
Well, Councilor Jordan, Councilor Carlino, I want to say thank you very much for your frank and well-considered responses, and also for your creativity and your bravery on council, and for representing me and everyone in this room. We'll move on to our Q&A portion now. Just going to need you guys to speak up. I'll just point at you individually from here, if that's all right. And we'll start over here. Tony.
Do you want us to repeat the question into the mic? Or will it get
I've got a mic here, so I can repeat it. Yeah, go ahead.
This sort of dates me, but in 1966, Jesse Unruh, a California politician, stated that money is the mother's milk of politics. Simple question, but difficult to answer. What do you think the proper role of money is in politics?
Well, I think certainly at the federal government level, politicians are way too controlled by money interests, like lobbyists and political action committees, and almost all of them are bought out. The only ones that aren't are the ones that have saying that they're only going to take small dollar donations from everyday people, and those are the only ones, like in federal government, that aren't bought out. At a Missoula level, I think the problem isn't necessarily that they're bought out by special interests. Sometimes they're just listening to the wrong people. I mean, except for like recently, like when we were running in 2021, we saw like we're starting to see more political action committees, like the Realtors PAC, like donated to like my opponent and to like some other people running. And then last year in 2023 with the mayor's race, they donated like $140,000 to one candidate running for mayor. And like they are trying to buy out Missoula politics now. So it's starting to become a problem. But I think it can be overcome like at a small level. Like I personally knocked on every single person's door at least once in my district, and anybody who wanted to run for city council could do that. And having that face-to-face interaction will beat any amount of money, I think. So it's not a huge problem in Missoula government right now, but it certainly could be.
Yeah, so I'm dual citizen. Sorry, I have a response. I'm dual citizen, Australian American, and I think about how they do it in Australia. They have 2 months to campaign. They only get a certain amount of money to campaign with, and it comes from tax dollars. Every single candidate gets the same amount of money. They have 35 different parties. They have compulsory voting, and I think that it worked really well, actually. And they had ranked choice voting as well. So. I would love to see some of that happen here because it just simplified things. And then if you left your campaign signs up past the election date, you got fined. Like they got it dialed in. But I know we're really different than that. I would love to just see PACs, corporations not be people. That would be a really good first change.
I just want to clarify, we're speaking into this microphone, so it'll be picked up on MCAT.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I live in East Missoula. I'm currently part of the county. However, the new growth plan land use policy and zoning is written 20 years into the future. So we do not have a voice on city council. We appeared before the city council recently for a development and were basically patted on the head, told we don't know what we really want, patronized and ignored. And for homes that are going to cost $450 to $850 was considered affordable housing. So what do people in East Missoula do when you control our future, but we can't vote for you?
First of all, I voted.
Land use policy, we were told of that policy on the Missoula Community Council 48 hours before the vote, which gave us no time to respond.
Agreed.
So what can we do is my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is such a great question. First of all, I voted no on that subdivision for a variety of reasons. And in that instance, we kept getting, East Missoula was left out of all of the engagement that the city did. We on council didn't even know that until you came and told us. That was the hard part, is they kept, the staff kept coming and saying, we've done all this engagement, we've gone here, we've done this survey. And then it comes time to vote, and everybody from East Missoula is like, you never once came out and talked to us. And we on city council did not know that. And that is a tough one, because we get the information from staff, and it's not fair. However, I think that your county commissioners, we have working relationships with the county commissioners. And I think really opening up that communication with your commissioner is really important, and saying, what are you doing for me? I think it's Juanita Vero that represents you out in Eastmo. I could be wrong. I need to double check. Yeah, and talk to them and say, what are you doing to advocate for citizens in the county who are going to be brought into the city? We want to know what you're doing for us. That's a really big one. I would also say, unfortunately, reach out to city councilors as well and just say, what are you doing to represent us? We're future constituents. What are you going to do for me? But that was a horrific oversight, and it's embarrassing, and it wasn't good enough, and I wish I'd known about it sooner.
That East Missoula is now considered an urban. I'm like, East Missoula is not urban. And we do not need 6-story buildings in East Missoula. I mean, move to any city and you will see what urban is. and we're not. But thank you for the answer.
Yeah, by the way, I've just been informed this is a prop, so. Yeah, just speak up, good.
Taxing second homes. As a practical question, there's two sort of competing pieces of legislation on property taxes in the state legislature. One is from the governor, who I think does want to tax second homes. Another one, Democrats. Do you have any idea on which one proposal might be better, or either one of them any good, or will it solve any issues? Is there anything that we should be talking to our legislators about there?
Have you read those?
No. So I vaguely know which ones you're talking about, but I don't know enough to speak to them. And I would say reach out to your local legislators and really have a good word with them. I apologize, I don't know more about them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think it's a good idea to, everybody should get first before people start getting seconds. And I think, it's a good idea to overall, tax wealth. But I think also the governor and some of the legislators are also avoiding taxing like the most wealthy people in our state at a fair rate. But I haven't read those bills exactly, but it does sound like a good conversation and probably bills that I would support. I'd have to read to make sure. But if it simply taxes second homes at a higher rate than first homes, I think it's a good proposal. Yeah.
There was a question over there. Yeah, go ahead.
Bill.
What's being done as far as canvassing or outreach on the campus of the University of Montana?
For DSA, I don't think we have much going on right now. We certainly have in the past. If people want to start a college DSA or join Western Montana DSA and get something going on college, I think a lot of us from our local chapter would support you all, and happy to talk about it with anybody that's part of DSA here. I think it's really important. A lot of college students and young people are fired up and are much more progressive than any of our governments. So that would be awesome. We should talk about it if you want to get it going. But like whenever I was campaigning, I would certainly I campaigned in 2021, but I was always trying to get on campus and get out the youth vote. I've got the university in my district too. So I think it's really important. And a lot of the people that live on campus don't vote especially in these local elections, or at least not at as high of a rate. But for organizing on campus, we certainly need more stuff like that. And you should talk to Brendan or me and Kristen or Brian or anybody that's part of DSA. We've got quite a few DSA members here actually, but I'm not going to name them all. But you should start talking to us and let's make it happen.
I want to comment on that really quick. The social and outreach working group of the DSA chapter here is tentatively planning to do a back-to-school event to try and engage college students. And so we should definitely come to our next business meeting and we can work with you to try and figure out something that will maybe be of interest to our college students as the local chapter here, start a YDSA, a young DSA chapter on the college campus.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, you should connect with Justice about that, and let's make it happen. Because I think a lot of college students at UM would be supportive or would like to see it and be able to pop into events like that.
Question back there? Yeah, go ahead.
I recently returned from Cuba, and I kind of had a firsthand witnessing of how I see that socialism doesn't work, or at least Soviet-style socialism. So when you speak about socialism, are you talking about like a hybrid society where, like, I agree, like we should be getting things back for the taxes we pay, like healthcare, education, all kinds of the basics. So I guess that's my question. Are you talking about a hybrid where we kind of soften the edges of capitalism, but we still have capitalism running alongside a strong social safety net kind of society, or are people here talking pure socialism, like getting rid of capitalism?
Yeah, I guess I won't answer for the whole DSA chapter, but I think, we definitely don't want to confuse like socialism with authoritarianism. Like when we're Western Democratic Socialists of America certainly believe in a democratically run government and society where everyday people have a vote in their workplace, in their government, and how things are run. And I don't know if that's really the case in Cuba, but I think ideally, make sure that everybody's, in my opinion, make sure that everybody's basic needs are not dependent on capitalism. Our healthcare, our housing, our water, food, this should not be dependent on capitalist society. Commodities, like things like that are just like random fun things, like I feel less strongly about that, but I also don't want to speak for the whole chapter. But I think we want a democratically run society where everyday people have a say in all of these different things as much as possible.
Yeah, I think I personally am looking at a bit of a hybrid. A lot of what Daniel said, I totally agree with, and I think about how it worked in Australia, where people say, what was the biggest difference between America and Australia? And I say medical bankruptcy. You can't go bankrupt in Australia for getting sick or injured, but you can still go to med school and get a job and earn $300,000 a year. A lot of things are means tested there as well, which I think is really great. So there, if you're lower income, you're getting more support from the government. And so I think in a way, I am looking for a bit of a hybrid, definitely democratically run. Don't care if you build cars and so, well, I don't know. Yes, a hybrid. But all of your basic needs, people shouldn't have to struggle to get their basic needs met ever.
Question up here, I believe. Yeah, go ahead.
Kind of going off of, I guess, voting and information on campus. I've lived in Montana, or Missoula specifically, my whole life, and I went to the university here. But a concern that I have are that a lot of young, impressionable people, they come here, 18 years old, they'll become, Montana residents, but then they leave after voting for things that they probably don't even care about and know that they will not be here more than 4 years. So my question is, how harmful do you think that is to Missoula, us being a college town? And I would be curious to know what percentage of our votes are coming from students that are just here temporarily.
I don't know if there's any way to really track that, to be honest. Do you know?
I don't know exactly on tracking it, but I know to vote in Montana, you just have to have lived here for 30 days, and then you can vote. And I think people should still have a vote. And for the most part, I do trust the youth vote and college vote. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. A lot of the things we don't even get to see play out. A lot of the stuff that we vote on city council takes years and years to play out too. So people that voted us in might not even live here by the time some of our policies get fully enacted too. So just kind of one of those weird things. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I have on it. But I think yeah, it is one of those weird things. And also when we're getting building citizen comment and data and stuff, some of those people, right now we spent so much time getting comments for our zoning plan, which is building out the next decades of our town. Many of those people that commented probably won't be here decades from now. And, but it's part of the democratic process. Whoever shows up and participates gets their voice heard, and it's tough, yeah, to think about how that all plays out, but.
I can actually answer that question. So, hi, fellow data scientists, social scientists. So, voting records are public information.
Sure.
As long as it's not commercial purposes that you're using it for, you can get the voting records for every single person in Missoula, which includes their age and their address and their voting record. So, if someone has voted only once or only a period of 4 years and they're within a certain age group, you can potentially assume that you can break up voting sectors by age, by address, by district, and by voting history. So you can derive some of that information. Although there's an assumption there, you'd have to make an assumption that someone
Of how they voted.
Just because they're young doesn't mean that's the only
That they were
reason
in college even,
right, so there's,
or if they're going to come
but
or
you could
go.
do it.
Yeah.
You could do it by cluster of age.
Yeah, sorry,
go ahead.
sorry, I want to add to that. Yeah, I agree. You just can't, you can't see how they voted, but you can make assumptions. It does remind me of some phone calls I get from constituents where, and they mean it, and I think they mean it from a good place, but they say, Missoula's getting too big, how do we keep people from moving here? And I'm like, well, we can't, just like voting, people can move wherever they want, but It really means a lot to me to think about, and I've talked about this already tonight, about what brought us to Missoula in the first place, or why we're in Missoula in the first place, and to remind people of that. That we let people in traffic, we let jaywalkers cross. We all love the Hip Strip and the or the Roxy, and we love all the public land around, or whatever it is that we love about Missoula. And just make sure we keep talking about that, because then it helps plant that seed of what made Missoula cool originally, and hopefully people, people will share that idea and vote.
Even if they do come here for a short time, we can show them what is important to us.
Yeah, that's my thing. That's my thing. It's just like, I'm a transplant from here. I'm from Grants Pass, Oregon, which was pivotal in criminalizing homelessness. But I came here for a variety. I did leave. I came here for a variety of reasons, and I tell people that all the time, why I moved here. I love college towns. I love that every hill I look at is public land. I love all of the different community groups. As a single mom, I moved here as a single mother, and one of the reasons why I moved here as a single mama was because of all the community support I could get. And just reminding people about those things and why Missoula is really pretty special, regardless of kind of exterior things, because it is a really special place.
Question back there, and then Chester. Yeah.
I just want to reiterate that transience of all voters. And I voted in Powell County for 7 years, and then I moved to Missoula from at that point it was the only prison in the state of Montana, and now we have a lot of them. But then a couple of years ago, I had to relocate to Yakima, Washington. I voted in Yakima, Washington for 1 year, and I voted for city council. I voted, and though the people that got in, potentially on my vote, are making decisions that I'm not around for. So that transience it happens.
That's part of it.
Or you can vote, like my dad voted in 2016 and then died. It happens. He was like, but I voted during university years, and I took it very seriously. I was young, I was able to vote. So I would hesitate to throw the impact of transience on any voting bloc. Any voting bloc.
Okay. Further questions? Robbie.
So you mentioned how, like, the financialization of everything in Maslow's hierarchy of needs and stuff, financializing that. You talked specifically about the private equity companies who are coming and buying up real estate, and just, in my understanding, that's a much bigger effect on what's causing the housing crisis that we've got right now, more than the vacation rentals and more than the influx of people moving here. Is there anything that you can do at the local level to stop them, to protect us from basically the predatory capitalism?
I'm not sure at the local level we have the capacity to do that, but at the state level, we can do things to disincentivize them.
Yeah, it is more of a state and federal government issue, because they've stopped us from taxing people at different rates. They've stopped us from in some ways I think we can. In some ways I don't think we can. But we did something like take on the Carlyle group to take over the water utility. Otherwise we would have this giant private equity firm running our water, which was terrible. And I think we can do more stuff like that. I would like to see Missoula City and County take over the ambulance service. I don't think it should cost thousands of dollars to get a ride to the hospital. I think we should take that over. So we can get creative.
Yeah, and I guess too, whenever we can, we should be land banking as a city. We should just be buying property and making sure that it never gets into capitalistic hands again. So I would love to see us putting more funding toward land banking. I think that's a good way to address it at the local level.
Yeah, we have a lot of debates around that lately where like they'll sell off our publicly owned land to a developer to get like a small portion of affordable housing. And it's like, I don't think we should be doing that at all. We're going to want that land in decades to come. Yeah, we should, like partner with like somebody that's not a capitalist interest or private like equity firm to build. We shouldn't have to rely on them for affordable housing, and we certainly shouldn't be selling off our public land to them. We're having that come up soon with the Payne Block, the old library. Like the city government is planning on probably selling it to some sort of private equity firm or something to build a small portion of affordable housing, when really we could rent it out to them. We could rent the land, and we can try and partner with them to create affordable housing. But we need to stop selling off our publicly owned land. It's happened quite a few times in the past couple of years on council, and I'm always voting against those every time and trying to explain. But like it feels like we're grabbing for small bits and pieces to get like a somewhat affordable rental, when it's like land is like a huge asset and we need to not be selling that off. But yeah, we can't do it all locally to fight off the private equity firms, but we could certainly do more.
Chester, you had a question?
I had a question, and that one is going to be, would it be possible to at least hit two birds with one stone, and that two birds being property taxes and the climate, and such that, would it be, such as a way to, for example, and I've been talking to this over slowly with Daniel Carlino, and that is a solar station inverter, something like that, that's owned by the city or county, that you can plug into and provide power for a limited time to the city, so in exchange for the property taxes or taxes in general.
Yeah, unfortunately, our hands are tied with changing property tax rates, but we could certainly do something like what you're talking about, with having publicly owned Wi-Fi, or with the making it easier for people to do solar and stuff. But we can't tie it to the property taxes because our hands are tied by state law, and it makes it really difficult to impose socialist policies when we can't tax people at different rates, because we either have to cut things that we have in the budget, and I'm okay with cutting some of the old things, or we have to increase property taxes, which ends up also making the cost of living higher for everyday people too. So it's tough, but I think ideally adding in new good things and looking back at things that we've been funding for decades that we don't need anymore and get rid of that stuff. But we have a really hard time taxing the rich, as a local government, because of state laws. And changing property taxes, like you're saying, give somebody a lower rate to do something good. We really can't do that, unfortunately, as a local government.
Yeah.
I also think that, a lot of the stuff that has a long-term payout is expensive up front. And there's a real hesitation at the local level to kind of invest in bigger projects that have longer-term payoffs because of that initial investment. And that's why we need you all to run for city council, so that we can start having a quorum and voting some of this stuff in that does cost more up front, but then has a longer payout.
Yep, I think, can I just see all hands who want to ask a question so I know how many are left? Looks like 4. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So, this is just an aside, but 38 years ago, I was that Californian who moved to Missoula. So I agree that we have to be welcoming, and I get the resentment, but by the same token, I think we have to be that community that we are, is welcoming people from everywhere. Anyway, but this is probably outside of your span of influence, but it just seems to me that churches get massive tax breaks. And I'd like to know what churches are doing in Missoula for the homeless problem, or just anything. I remember the Salvation Army, and I don't even hear about the Salvation Army anymore. They used to, do things for homeless people and for the poor people and stuff. And so it just seems to me, I don't hear a lot about activism on the side of churches. And what are we getting back for the tax breaks that they get?
So I don't know a lot about individual programs, but there is a city initiative. It was I can't remember. There's a houseless action group that consists of local private nonprofits, some constituents, some city staff, and some churches. And there are 2 churches who are willing to open their doors and/or their property to allow unhoused people to shelter. That plan is still in the works. The churches have not come, we're not naming them yet, but there is a plan in the works, and 2 churches are involved out of, I don't know, the 58 or whatever we have in Missoula. I don't know what individual programs each church has, but the city is working with 2 churches to provide options for unhoused people to shelter going forward.
Yeah, I know there's also the Missoula Interfaith Collaborative is at work on affordable housing. And maybe after the event, I think there's several people in here who would love to talk to you about details.
Yeah, and people, should, you can organize your own church or faith group and try and make it happen. And the city is here to partner. But there is some of that going on though already. And then, certainly people can, step up at any place that you work or go to church or what have you, and try to organize that too. And the city's happy to be a partner.
Before we get to our last 3 questions, I just want to bring up some upcoming events. The next in our Socialism speaker series is by retired UM professor Clem Work on socialism and worker politics in Montana history. That's Thursday, March 6th, 6 p.m. right here. Before that, on the 8th of February, this coming Saturday, 10 a.m., we have a DSA member meeting, but you don't need to be a member to go. If you would like to attend that meeting, 10 a.m. at Good Works Place on Alder Street. If you want to be a member, you go to dsausa.org, join up, and then you can vote with us too. On the 15th of February, that's another Saturday, there will be a fundraiser for families in Gaza at the UCC at 1 p.m. And then on the 23rd of February at 1 p.m., I believe, or maybe noon, there's a book club about Palestine's Children, a collection of short stories by Ghassan Kanafani, which will be a lot of fun. So if you can't stay for the last 3 questions, there's buttons and stickers. Please do sign in here, and let's continue on. I think over here, yeah.
I've got a couple questions, so just bear with me for a little bit. And I don't like to be the guy that has to, but I care to mention the elephant in the room. What is the plan for a second, possibly more radical Trump presidency? Like, is there anything we can do here to help people who would be targeted by that presidency, or to help ourselves if, in that case, we are targeted?
There is there's a podcast I listen to. I'm going to keep the name of it to myself because it's incriminating. But they were talking about an organization called My Chosen Family, I think, which is a nationwide organization that works with people on the LGBTQ spectrum about what they can do to protect themselves from any upcoming policies. And unfortunately, it's going to be harder now that he's in office, but there's some really practical ideas on their website that they have for people to make themselves safe. Also, there are some horrific bills at the state level right now that we can call and provide testimony on. I know I called in opposition of HB 121, which is a bill that's going to require people to use the bathroom of their sex based on genetics. And there's all these questions of how are we going to enforce this? It's going to cost a lot to facilitate it because places that have single bathrooms are going to have to build multiple bathrooms. And on top of all of it, it's just incredibly dehumanizing and a violation of privacy, which our Constitution really protects us from. Again, I think I've already admitted that I'm kind of a pessimist. I think it's going to be a rough 4 years. And I think that if nothing else, the city has a bill tracker and city staff have picked out bills that they think are important to the city to watch. And originally, they'd put HB 121 and put watching. And it's like, I asked, I said, why are we watching that? Why are we not taking a stand against it? And Missoula has this idea that anytime we stick our necks out, we get slapped too hard, and so it's not worth it. And so what we were told is that it doesn't help when Missoula gets involved. I am so tired of that rhetoric. It is time for Missoula to get involved. They can't take any more from us. We tried to pass a single-use plastic bag ban. They told us we couldn't. They took away our gas tax. They have made it hard for Missoula to be Missoula. It's not paying off to stick our head in the sand. So it's time for Missoula to stick its big, loud, proud, progressive head out at the state level and take back our local control and protect the people and our refugee and our Native American and our trans community and protect them and to go on the record and take the consequences. I just have heard too many times it doesn't help when Missoula gets involved. I don't care anymore. It's time for Missoula to get involved. Sorry? It's Chosen Family, some iteration of My Chosen Family or chosenfamily.org. And they just had some really amazing ideas for what you can do to protect yourself prior to Trump taking office. So like I said, it might be a little harder now, but this person, they had the executive director on the podcast I was listening to, and she just had some amazing ideas.
We'll be having an upcoming Know Your Rights training with DSA soon, and also there's a piece of paper, there's a white piece of paper about what to do if the feds or the ICE or somebody comes to your door. So.
Yeah, we definitely shouldn't be giving up, at this time. It's a good time to start organizing, join a group, like DSA is a good group to join, or like Forward Montana, or like the LGBTQ Center, or like there's really dozens of groups in town and ways to get involved. So like joining something and just trying to be a part of it. I would follow along with the legislative session for the next few months, like Kristen said. Like Forward Montana is like an easy way to follow along and like getting on their email list and checking out their social medias. But we can testify like remotely on any of these crazy bills. But I would find a way to get involved and try to take care of each other, like, because yeah, it is getting pretty terrible pretty fast. But it'll come in waves, and I think in the long run we'll get better. And then from the government perspective, like when Trump and Supreme Court go, oh, now you guys have the power to criminalize homelessness, we on the council say no, we shouldn't do that. Or like, we can does the local government want to coordinate with ICE? Like we have stuff like that, and then we can stand up and hold a resistance against like the federal government when they're trying to do authoritarian stuff. But I mean, now's a good time to get involved in some group. I think DSA is great, and we've got lots of subgroups. But there's also a lot of places in town that we can start organizing and getting together with people. We've got power in numbers.
Yeah, sorry, just two other organizations. The Missoula Tenants Union is killing it right now. If you're a renter, I highly recommend being a part of Missoula Tenants Union. And then the other place, formerly known as Montana Women Vote, they are now Catalyst Montana, and they've joined up with the Human Rights Council, and they're doing an incredible job of identifying bills that are worrisome and what you can do about it. And so if you can get on their mailer, they're sending a weekly update, a legislative update every week. That's just super helpful.
And final question.
So, how do you guys think elected officials like yourselves should interact with movement groups like DSA or other ones? Like, what's the best way to have a synergy between the two so that we can enhance each other's power?
I'll give you my phone number.
I mean, I think, like any ideas that like activist groups in town like have and want to bring forward to us as council members, like we have the authority to make it into a policy. So if it's a city policy, bring it to us, and we'll help craft it and try to bring it up for a vote. So activist groups and other like groups in town should be able to work on these things themselves, and then we're happy to introduce the policies. But yeah, you can always call and email us and work together and on things like that too.
Yeah, so you can develop legislation. Just bring it to us, and we will bring it to the council floor. So if you have ideas, it's that simple. It's an idea that turns into an ordinance or a piece of legislation or a resolution. We're just your conduit. If you have the ideas, that's our job. Bring it to us.
Yeah, I think that's actually how I've introduced most of my policies on council. Like right now, there's a Beyond Pesticides group in town where they're trying to get pesticides out of parks, and I've been working with them and a couple other council members, and we're going to get it up for a vote here in the next couple months. And like it's like grassroots like policy, and then like we just have the authority to bring policies forward. Yeah. So things like that, like we should keep working on.
I think it's fun too to come speak. So if there's ever a speaking opportunity, I'm sure Daniel is too. Come and chat. If you want us to attend events, just let us know. I'm happy to do that for sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you, and thank you everybody for coming. Maybe later questions can be either addressed to us at DSA or to the counselors after the event. I just want to reiterate that the power is in this room. Money's made up, and capital has a mystifying and obfuscating effect on politics. Just to paraphrase Karl Marx, the power is here, and Missoula will be better with our help. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everybody, and see you soon. Good work.